Okay, so relation of essence to genus, species, and difference. So this is interesting just by the title because in the previous 2 chapters, he's already said that essence just is genus plus difference. There was a time in, I think, our second time meeting, so chapter 2, where I had like nature, quiddity, essence, form, and then showed how all these in different senses and ways ultimately are just relating to genus plus difference. So animal, rational animal. So then you're like, well, why is there a relation of essence to genus, species, and difference? Like, what does he mean by relation? Well, so he's talking about what we've seen what essence means in composite substances. But remember, essence in composite substances equaled ontology, right? So the essence of composite substances was not form, and it wasn't matter. That's how he begins chapter 2. It's the combination of the two. So he's talking about, so epistemologically, essence is the what it is of the thing, the genus plus species, right? Mm-hmm. But in ontological terms, essence is not genus plus species for a material object. Because the essence of a material object is the most fundamental ontological base which makes an object be, and it's not form, right? Because form needs matter to have material existence. Yeah. And it's not matter because matter needs form to have material existence. So it's the combination of the two, perhaps oddly, is more fundamental than either of its parts.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole of form and matter. Yeah. Its parts are form and matter, but the whole is prior to the parts ontologically. Mainly because the whole makes the parts what they are. That's the idea, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you wouldn't have a finger unless it was on an entire body with a head and arms and all that stuff. So you need the whole structure of the body for the part to have the part. But if there was just a finger lying around, you'd never seen it on a body before, you'd be like, what's that? Well, it's not a finger until it's on a body. So every part is in virtue what it is by what part it plays in the whole that it's a part of. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what's going on. So that to which the notion of a genus, species, or difference belongs as attributed to an individual determinate thing. In other words, we're talking about substances again. It is therefore impossible that the notion of a universal should belong to an essence when it's expressed as a part. For example, okay, I think the first 2 parts. Okay, yes. For example, the term humanity or animality, that's why Avicenna says that rationality is not a difference, but a principle of a difference. For the same reason, humanity is not a species, nor animality a genus. Okay. So I think I might be able to sum up the whole chapter in those couple lines. Nor can we say that the notions of genus and species belong to an essence as a reality existing outside individual things as Platonists held. Okay. Prepare yourself. This is what's going on here. He says, here's the key term. It's impossible that the notion of universal, that is genus or species, belongs to an essence. That's weird. What is an essence? Well, humanity is an essence, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to draw this. Humanity. Now, you might say humanity is a universal. We're talking all ontologically still. We're not talking epistemologically anymore. So when he asks, what's the relations of essence, genus, and of genus, species, and difference to essence, he's saying, what's the relation of these terms of genus, species, and difference to essence of a composite substance of ontology. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So he says the notion of universal, it's impossible to belong to an essence when it's expressed as a part. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what this means. Let's say you were like, I want to know the parts, I want to express what the parts of humanity are. Humanity is a whole thing. Let's express the parts. So we could say rational, obviously. And we could say made of flesh and bones. That's actually his, remember, flesh and bones, the matter, undesignated, made of flesh and bones. Now, humanity, how would you put this? So this is the essence of humanity, what it is to be humanity. It's rationality and flesh and bones, absolutely. Put absolutely there. Now, these are the parts of humanity. Would you agree? This is a part of humanity, that's a part of humanity. Mm-hmm. What he's saying is the fact that it's a universal. So let's get clear. What is the definition of universal?
Well, there can be multiple, replications, I guess. It can apply to...
You're exactly on target. Aristotle's verbatim definition is that which can be predicated of many.
Yeah.
That which can be predicated of many. Okay. So anything is a universal if you can say that thing of multiple other things. So square is a universal because there's at least two squares out there. We call this thing a square. The chair is a universal, right? That's a chair, that's a chair. It's now a universal simply in virtue that we've predicated this object a chair and that object a chair. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So humanity is a universal because we say you're a human, I'm a human. We predicate both of us as human. It's now predicated of many. Now we have a universal. So you might say part of humanity, when we're like, well, what's humanity? Well, humanity is a universal. So you're like, okay, humanity is irrational, humanity is made of flesh and bones, and humanity is a universal. That is, we're literally saying that the fact that humanity is a universal is part of the essence of humanity. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. He says that's impossible. Yeah, that's what he's saying. I know. So that's impossible. Nor can we say that the notions... So also by universal, he also means that humanity is like a species.
Yeah.
He's also saying humanity is not technically speaking a species in the ontological sense. Mm-hmm. Like a species, since a species is if your species existed as such rather than a species existing in an individual in a particular, like you can imagine, like we both of I have the you and I have the form of humanity. It exists as itself, right? Yeah. That's what he's saying. It's impossible. Like a platonic form. He's basically calling it a platonic form. Like the platonic form of humanity doesn't exist. Long story short. So this is what he's talking about. Like we're not talking about, obviously epistemologically, humanity is a species. But ontologically, the species of humanity doesn't exist. It only exists in particulars, not in itself. Because if humanity itself was a universal, then you would be a Platonist, basically.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because Platonic forms are the universal, like the chairness, right? Mm-hmm. Plato's like, all chairs are chairs in virtue of it participating in the form of chair out there, up in the mind of God. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no. Aristotle's like, no, it's a chair in virtue of the fact that it does have the form of chair, but it's not participating in it. It's actually made of the form of chair with matter, right? Mm-hmm. So if humanity had universal in its essence, he's basically saying that would just be a Platonic form.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because what it is to be humanity is just to be a separate substance, like an immaterial substance that is humanity as such. He's like, that can't be it. Secondly, nor can we say that the notions of genus and species belong to an essence as a reality existing outside of individual things. That's what he's saying with the Platonist stuff. Yes. That is why I says that rationality is not the difference, but the principal difference. For the same reason, humanity is not a species nor animality a genus. Okay. Got those slightly mixed up, but it's ultimately basically the same idea. This separate entity, moreover, would be no help in knowing the individual. We therefore conclude that the notion of genus or species applies to the essence when it's expressed as a whole, for example, by the term man or animal, containing implicitly and indistinctly everything in the individual. So, understood in this sense, a nature or essence can be considered in two ways. First, absolutely in its proper... Okay, so he's basically like, look, I'm not saying that these exist outside of a substance. Humanity doesn't exist outside of a substance, is the idea. He's going to get into a little more why, but now, understood in this sense, a nature or essence can be considered two ways. First, absolutely according to its proper meaning. In this sense, nothing is true of it except what belongs to it as such. Whatever may be attributed to it, the attribution is false. For example, to man as man belonging rational and animal, everything else included in its definition, but white or black or any similar attribute, and the notion of humanity does not involve man as man. So, we're basically talking about the definition of man. So, man equals rational animal, also a vegetative, alive thing of matter, etc. So the proper definition of man, definition meaning genus plus difference. So he's like, if you go back to universal not being a part of it, because if a universal is a part of it, it'd be a separate substance, we can't say that man as man is a universal. Because that's not a part of man. All that's a part of man is that he's a rational animal. It has nothing to do with if it's in a universal or a particular.
Yeah.
So, for example, man, but white or black or anything. So that's just accident. Clearly, accident's not part of the definition. If someone should ask them whether a nature understood in this way can be called one or many, we should reply it's neither. So this is the big thing. This is he's making, if you get a degree in philosophy, I don't think I've said this before. I don't say it a lot because it's moderately cringe, but it's true. When it's done right, it's done right. What we say here is that, so we have this problematic. Remember, here's the problematic. I actually have it right here. The problematic is what Porphyry said in his isagogy, right? Whether genera and species are real or in bare thoughts alone. Whether there is a humanity and it's universal, or we just think that there's a humanity.
Yeah.
Whether they are real as bodies or incorporeal. So that's Plato versus Aristotle. Whether humanity or man is real, but it only exists in a particular, or whether humanity exists in the sky, as a Platonic form. And whether they are separated insensibles or have their reality in connection with them. That one's a little I don't know. I can't remember quite what C means exactly. I could give it a few different interpretations. There's probably one particular sense of it, but it's irrelevant for our purposes because the first two are good. Remember, that is the problematic he's responding to. Does man, the universal? Man is a universal insofar as it's predicated of many. Mm-hmm. But that's epistemologically. It's a universal epistemologically. Is it a universal ontologically? Is there one man that many participate in? Is there many of the form of man all over the place? So he says, if someone should ask whether the nature understood in this way, whether man is man, a rational animal, is one or many, right? Is there one single man that we all participate in? Or is there many mans that's in you and me and the other person? If we went with the more Platonic direction, there's one man. That has its own problems. How can many things be one thing?
Yeah.
If there's many men, right? This has its own problem. How can these are identical. How can there exist two things which are completely identical? Right? Many men of the same exact nature also have its problems, right? And so Aquinas, this is the big problematic, right? You have the Aristotelians being the nominal or the not more nominalist type, that there only exist individuals. You have the Platonists where it's this. They both have their problems. What does he say? Whether man is one or many, we should reply that it's neither. In other words, this is what I was saying, that's moderately cringe, but what he's doing. What we're going to say is he's set all this up for 2 chapters. Thomas is making a move here. He's making a move. He's doing something about this. Like, we're not just laying ground. Like, we got the groundwork. We got the Porphyrian tree. We got essence. We got being. We got the ontology of the Porphyrian tree. Obviously, chapter 2 is a lot.
Yeah.
But now we're getting into business. And this is his move. He is trying to find, basically, you could either put it a midpoint between the realists and the nominalists, or you could say he's trying to go outside and carve a completely third position. And that's what he's doing. He's carving basically a third position that it's neither. And how is he going to do it? Well, what he thinks is, if you're a Platonist and you're on this side of the divide, and you think man is one thing, a universal, that we merely participate in it, then you think of the essence of man with rational and animal, you also have universal. That's what you think. And then if you're on this side, you have man. It's a universal, but it's also one thing. Right? Like it's one here, it's one here. Well, I guess this is more... Yeah, this is actually more... I'm sorry. This is man... Yeah, I actually totally flipped those. The Platonic version is rational animal plus one thing.
Yeah.
It's one. There's one man, right? Mm-hmm. How do we explain exactly how this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy are men? Something like participation. It's a pretty odd, vague verb, but that's what the Platonists go with. And then man is rational plus animal plus many, because there's many of these things, right? There's your man, Socrates' man, my man. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And he's trying to say, no, the real man is just rational animal. It doesn't have in its essence a numerical value.
That makes sense, yeah.
That's what he's saying. This comes straight from Avicenna's Metaphysics, Book 5. He takes this straight from Avicenna. What we are dealing with is something called, he doesn't actually, I don't think he says this in the book. I don't know if it's anachronistic, meaning something that historians kind of made up later to explain what's going on here, or this was a commenter. But what this is called is a common nature. A common nature is when it's described sort of like an essence through genus plus species without a numerical value. Mm-hmm. Without one, without many. Avicenna's famous line that he gets this from is hoarseness is just hoarseness. So, we can put it in terms of man. What is man? Man is just man. It's just something made of flesh and bones with a rational faculty. They're kind of staying agnostic about its numerical value.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, what's hoarseness? Is there a lot of horses? And he's like, no. That's a non sequitur. What the essence of hoarseness, what it is to be a horse, has nothing to do if it's a universal or a particular. It just is what it is. It's just hoarseness. It's in other words, it's a mere concept. If I asked you what's your concept of chair, you wouldn't say that chairs, there are many chairs in the concept of chair. You wouldn't say there's only one chair in the concept of chair. You would just tell me what a chair is. It's a thing which has four legs and a back that you sit on. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, so he says, if plurality belong to its concept, if many belong to its concept, it could never be one, though it's present in Socrates. So too, if oneness belonged to its concept, the nature of Socrates and of Plato would be identical and could not be multiplied to many individuals. So his ideas is, if you can say that man is one, there literally can only be one man. Mm-hmm. And if you say man or many, there'd be many men and they'd all be the exact same thing. Everyone would be Socrates. And he's like, well, both of these are ridiculous, obviously. Yeah. So that's what he says. And the second way a nature or essence can be considered is according to the being it has in that or that individual. So he's like, in this way, something is attributed to it accidentally because the subject in which it exists, we say that man is white because Socrates is white, though this does not belong to man insofar as he man. So this is easy stuff. This is just accidental predication. Like accidents have nothing to do with the essence of something. This nature has a twofold being, one in individual things and the other in the soul, and accidents fall upon the nature because of both beings. In individuals, moreover, nature has a multiple being corresponding to the diversity of individuals, but none of these beings belong to the nature from the first point of view, that is to say, when considered absolutely. It is false to say that the essence of man as such has being in this individual. If it belonged to man as man to be in this individual, it would never exist outside the individual. So he's also saying, he's basically at this point going on about sort of he's basically saying people aren't very careful with their concept of man. Mm-hmm. Because he's basically clarifying, like, when you say something is in the essence of man, you really have to be committed to that. So, for example, he says, if it belonged to man as man, the concept of man, to be in this individual, it would never exist outside the individual. Right? So you can't put it's in me as or that man exists in an individual. Right? Because if I said, well, man exists in an individual, you'd be like, well, which individual? If I said you, then all men are you. If I said it exists in individuals, all individuals, well, then the essence of man would have to be rational, animal, and existing in this person and that person and that person and that person. Mm-hmm. And neither are clearly in the concept of man. Neither are clearly the essence of man. It is true to say, however, that it does not belong to man as man to exist in that or individual or in the soul. So it's clear that the nature of man considered absolutely abstracts from every being, but in such a way that it presents from none of them. And it is the nature to consider in this way that we attribute to individuals. So, in other words, where man exists or how it exists, whether it exists as a form people participate in, as something in the individual, as in this individual, has nothing to do with what man is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is the nature considered in this way that we attribute to individuals. So when we say someone is a man, if we say, Socrates is a man, what we predicate of Socrates, we're not predicating anything ontologically exactly of Socrates as far as the essence of man is considered. We're saying he is a man. He is the essence of man. But we're not saying, gosh, it's so complicated. You can see he's really trying to keep this razor tight.
Yeah.
He's like, because we need to keep the predication. Here's the idea. We need to keep it to be a thing where we can actually predicate it, where we can say Socrates is a man. And we need to keep it ontologically where, like, it's not just like that's false. Like, he needs to be ontologically a man. But we also can't say that anything of this thing that's a man that we're saying he is, that the way that man as such exists has anything to do with being in Socrates. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of the idea. And we don't have to go into the super specific. Like, it is true that to a certain degree in each individual sentence here, he's doing an immense amount of philosophical work as far as trying to dodge this line. We don't have to go into every particular specific, but that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get rid of any implication or association of the universality or the particularity of man right now. Okay. So then he says, nevertheless, it cannot be said that a nature thus considered has the character of a universal because unity and community are included in the definition of a universal, neither of which belongs to human nature considered absolutely. If a this is kind of more of the same thing. You can't have, another reason you can't have universal in it is because of the concept universal. If you say something is a universal, you have to say it has unity and community, because that is in the definition of universal. But that doesn't belong to man. Unity and community doesn't belong to man, right? If community were included in the concept of man, community would be found in everything in which humanity is found, but this is false because there is nothing common in Socrates. Everything in him is individuated. Neither can it be said that human nature happens to have the character of a genus or a species through the being it has in individuals, because human nature is not found in individual men as a unity, as though it were one essence belonging to all of them, which is required for the notion of a universal. So, once again, this is just more... These are just more... do you know what a reductio ad absurdum is?
No.
Reductio ad absurdum is a form of argument where you show that what you believe ultimately ends up in a contradiction. Mm-hmm. So, let's say if P were true, then Q and not Q would be true. P is some proposition, the sky is blue. Well, let's say if the sky was blue, then you would both be sitting right now and standing right now. Right?
Yeah.
Well, then P can't be true. Because if the sky is blue, then that means you're also sitting and standing at the same time. Right?
Yeah, which isn't possible.
Which isn't possible. So therefore, because this is the case, you can conclude not P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that logic, the sky is not blue.
Yes. The sky can't be blue because if it were blue, then two contrary things would be true. So what he's trying to say is he's doing a reductio ad absurdum here as far as like, look at all the things that would be true if we said universal was in the essence of man.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's doing right here. Yes. It remains then that human nature happens to have the character of a species. So this is the other conclusion. So he's going on and on about that genus can't be part of its essence. Because when we say universal, we can also just translate this to it's a species, for example. But species can't be a part of it because then you have, unity and community in Socrates, but there is no community in Socrates because there's only one thing. Community would be the coexistence of two things. But there is only one thing there. So you can see there's all these problems when you put a numerical amount, anything to do with being numerical, or anything to do with a species or a genus in the definition of man. Okay. So that's kind of part one. Part two. Like I said, today is actually easier. Okay, part two. So, remember, the object of the chapter is, what is the relation of genus, species, and difference to the essence of a composite substance? Mm-hmm. Well, they have nothing to do with each other ontologically, as you can tell. Do you see why?
Yeah.
How?
Because I feel like with all this stuff, like I have it, but I can't say it.
Yeah, it's a lot. So the idea is like they can't be related in an ontological way, like it's in the definition of the thing, because then you run into all the problems of it being a Platonic form, and you run into all the problems of it being actually existing in the form in particulars.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If it was a one species, it'd be the Platonic form. If the species was many, then you would also have that problem of like having the same thing of multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
I probably haven't done justice to the issue of the multiplicity, plurality aspect to this, but that's okay. Just know that there are plenty of issues. So much so that Aquinas sees that you can't do it.
Yeah.
So what is it then? What is the nature of it? Well, it remains then that human nature happens to have the character of a species, that is a universal of one concept being the same of many, only through the being it has in the intellect. So it turns out even species, man as such, man as a thing, an essence, only exists in the mind. We form it as a concept when we see all the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a nominalistic position. Human nature as being in the intellect abstracted from all individuating factors, and thus it has a uniform character with regard to all individual men outside the soul, being equally the likeness of all and leading to knowledge all insofar as they are men. Because it has this relation to all individual men, the intellect discovers the notions of species and attributes it to the nature. This is why the commentator says that the intellect causes universality to things. Avicenna makes the same point. So, in other words, really easy way to say this, the notion of humanity. So, Plato, I wouldn't say this is directly relating to it, but Plato has this beautiful argument from recollection in the Phaedo. You should really read it sometime. I'll give it to you. It's probably only a few pages. But the idea is like, you don't ever learn about equality. You only kind of know it. And so you're actually just recollecting things. And this shows that the mind and the soul is eternal because you've always known it. And so he's like, no. You're not recollecting what a man is. It's not an innate idea. You're not born with the man. You're in the world. You see many men. You experience it. And then you form the concept of man.
Yeah.
You do it through induction process. Although this nature apprehended by the intellect has the same character of a universal from its relations to things outside the soul, because it's one likeness of them all, nevertheless it has being in this or that intellect. It is a particular apprehended likeness. The commentator was clear in error then. Okay, wait 1 second. I remember there was one other thought when I was reading that I thought I needed to mention. Because it is one likeness of them all, nevertheless it has being in this or that intellect. It is a particular apprehended likeness. Yeah, so... yeah, so, he's giving way, like, because we create this on our own, and it only has being in my intellect and your intellect. If there was no intellect, it would have no being. It slightly varies, perhaps, what you consider it to be and what I consider it to be. The commentator was clearly in error then. That would be Averroes. He wanted to conclude that the intellect is one in all men from the universality of the apprehended form. In fact, the universality of form is not due to being it has in the intellect, but its relation to things as their likeness. In the same way, if there were a material statue representing many men, the image or likeness of the statue would have its own individual being as it exists exists in the determinate matter, but it would have the nature of something common as general representation of many men. So, there's basically one human nature, but it's represented differently as different men are concerned, different beings, different minds are concerned, but, it's close enough. Okay, final little part. Yes. Because it is a human nature absolutely considered that is predicated of Socrates, this nature does not have the character of a species when considered absolutely. I've said that 100 times. This is one of the accents that may accompany it of the being it has in the intellect. This is why the term species is not predicated of Socrates, as though we were to say Socrates is a species. This would necessarily happen, however, if the notion of species belonged to man as individual being in Socrates, according to his absolute consideration, namely insofar as he is a man. For we predicate Socrates, everything that belongs to man is man. And nevertheless, it is essential to a genus to be predicated. This is included in its definition. So, yeah. But yes, genuses are that which can be predicated in many. So but Socrates is not a genus. Socrates is a person, an individual. He's not a genus. But that which we are predicating him, we consider it to be a genus because our intellect comes up with that categorization. Predication is something achieved by the intellect in its act of combining and dividing, saying things are true and false, having for its foundation in reality the unity of those things, which is attributed to the other. So, this is why the notion of predicability can be included in the meaning of the notion of a genus, a notion that is also produced by the act of the intellect. But that to which the intellect attributes the notion of predicability, combining it with something else, is not the concept itself a genus, but rather that to which the intellect attributes the concept of a genus as far... Okay, yeah, this is repetitive. Okay, so one other thing really is... this is an interesting and important sentence. Predication is something achieved by the intellect in its act of combining and dividing, which means chopping up the world into categories based on what's true and false about something. So it's false that a vegetable has an intellect, so we put it in this category of vegetative souls. Mm-hmm. That would be combining and dividing. So, and then we combine it when we go up the Porphyrian tree. Well, they're both alive. And then we divide it with the differences, right? Yeah. And we divide it down to man and then to the individual with the designated matter. So the intellect categorizes things naturally by the Porphyrian tree, having for its foundation in reality the unity of those things, one of which is attributed to the other. If it is a true judgment, it corresponds to the being of things. Yes. So he's basically just saying... the basis of this combining and dividing is that it actually is like that in reality. Mm-hmm. Is the idea. So, reality is in fact cut up with animals and humans, and we divide it like this, that, and the other. Now, then we say like this is human, this is animal, and then we say... And we cut these up because one has a rational soul, one has a mere sensitive soul. We cut these up. This is a genus, something with a rational soul, or a species, something with a rational soul, but only in the mind. Right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
This is a genus only in the mind. So it's not a genus in reality, because... It turns out genus, species, and difference are just logical terms. That's it. They're just terms that we use to make sense of how we divide the world. But this dividing we can do, it's not arbitrary. It's not done without any principle or rule undergirding it to make the process kind of valid. Its basis in reality is that reality is actually like this. Mm-hmm. But then it's weird, right? Because there are no genuses or species in reality. But our dividing up of reality based on genuses and differences is valid in our head because it corresponds to reality.
Yeah.
Do you see the problem there?
Uh-huh.
What's the problem?
Well, because... I mean, obviously, it makes sense for us in like the. Well, it. it makes sense because it's real and we can.
So, genus and species are only in the mind. But we
Yeah.
divide up reality
Like,
through means of genus, species, and difference, right?
yeah, and we do that automatically. And
Yes.
we see those
Things in
real.
Yes.
Because obviously a human is not. Well, a human is a rational animal, but a human is not the same as an animal with a sensitive soul.
Yes.
So.
Yes, they're not. But the fact that rational animal and species, or the fact that genus and species, they only exist in the mind. Reality, we just have things.
Yeah.
So there's not like the Porphyrian tree is not existing in reality. It's in our mind. But the reason why our Porphyrian tree basically is valid is because having its foundation in reality.
Yeah.
So he says that this is valid because foundation in reality. But in reality, these things don't actually exist. So what does he mean?
Well, I feel like.
Because in reality, you only have the common nature. You just have man as man.
Yeah.
Once we say it's a universal or particular or a species or a difference or etc., that's happening only in the mind.
Yeah.
The only actual thing in reality is the common nature.
Mm-hmm.
So these things just turn out to be common nature, right? Those are the only things. And so those are why things exist in reality. The essences that are informed by matter are common natures, but they don't have anything to do with genus, species, or difference in reality. So it's just an odd statement. But he's right that the form of dog is different than the form of human. And that corresponds to reality. There is, in fact, a form of dog. There is, in fact, a form of human. They're different. And so we have to divide these things up. And I think that's the best argument you can give to help him out here. So, yeah, that's basically it. So let's read the last one really fast. There's just one last. From this, we can see how the essence or nature is related to the notion of species. The notion of species is not one of those items that belong to the nature when it's considered absolutely, nor is it one of the accidents that fall upon the nature because of the being it has outside the soul, like whiteness or blackness. Rather, the notion of species is one of the accidents that fall upon the nature because of the being it has in the intellect. In this way, too, that notion of genus and difference belong to it. So, yes, the only reason genus and species exist at all is because our mind attributes to a concept like man or dog that it is a genus or species, and that's the only reason why it has being in that way. So reality just has a bunch of common natures. There's not a great way to interpret this because then you go, well, okay, we have the same common nature of man. Mm-hmm. This still seems to run into the many problem.
Yeah.
But, and ultimately, this is one of the reasons why. And then the way he's also trying to tell us that we have the common nature, and what makes us different is our matter, which he always held. But ultimately, that doesn't have much to do with the fact that we still have two of the same exact common natures of man. But he has at least put a wedge in the door of this problem to make sure these universal concepts don't have universality or particularity in them, so we don't need to worry about the universal particular problem for a while. And now we can move on and do other things for the time being. Because chapter 4 is essence found in separate substances. So we're going to move on to that next time. And so chapter 4, paragraph 7 has his famous and, in my opinion, best proof of God in it.
What does it say?
What does it say?
Yeah.
You want to know?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. I wrote a whole paper on it.
Oh,
That paper is on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. Here's the idea. I think I told you some of it, but the idea is, whatever belongs to a thing is either caused by the principles of its nature, as for the capacity of laughter or man, or it comes from an extrinsic principle. So everything, I'm going to cut this off.